Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's webinar. We will be discussing the Lower East Side Community Connectivity Active Transportation Plan. I am Jessica Grant, Supervising Transportation Planner with the City of Santa Barbara. With me also tonight is Chelsea Swanson, Project Manager for this planning effort, Derek Bailey, our City Traffic Engineer, and Norma Cervantes, our Administrative Analysis, who will also be doing our Spanish translation tonight. We'd like to do a quick poll to see if you will be listening to the webinar in Spanish or in English. Please go ahead and answer the poll now. ¿Escucharás el webinar en inglés o español? Okay, for those wishing to do, thank you. For those wishing to do Spanish translation, please select Spanish under the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. Para la interpretación del español, seleccione el español en el botón de interpretación en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Also, during the webinar, you may use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we will respond to questions at the end of the presentation. So why are we having this meeting? Well, the city adopted the Pedestrian Master Plan back in 2006, which is intended to enhance the city's walkability, increase connections to destinations throughout the city, and promote walking as a viable means of transportation. The city also adopted a Vision Zero strategy in 2018, which is to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. These plans and policies are the basis for grant funding that was received to analyze ways to improve walking and biking between the Eastside neighborhood and waterfront area. Depending on community feedback, this plan could identify approaches, improving the existing crossing locations, or a plan for a completely new freeway crossing. Today, we'll share with you examples of both recently completed and upcoming bicycle and pedestrian projects in the area to get a bigger picture of connectivity in the plan area. Our main objective of tonight's meeting is to hear from you about what's working and not working with regard to walking and biking between the East Side and areas south of the freeway. And also whether the city should study a potential new freeway crossing for cyclists and pedestrians. This slide shows the plan area, which is focused on connectivity between the East Side and destinations south of the freeway. As you can see, there is approximately 1.25 miles between Milpas and Casique connections and the Cabrillo Boulevard connection to get across Highway 101. The distance demonstrates how the freeway is a physical barrier to walking and biking. Now we're going to pause to do a quick poll to learn more about our webinar attendees. For the question, we would like to know, do you live, work, or go to school in the East Side or East Beach neighborhoods? Select all that apply. I live in the East Side neighborhood. I live in the East Beach neighborhood. I work in the East Side neighborhood. I work in the East Beach neighborhood. I attend school in the East Side neighborhood. I do not live, work, or go to school in the East Side or East Beach neighborhoods. Please take a minute to provide answers, and again, select all that apply. What I'm seeing here is that most of you attending the webinar tonight do live in the East Side and or work in the East Side. Okay. Back to where this planning process originated from, the city's pedestrian master plan, which was adopted in 2006, recognizes the freeway as a physical barrier to walking and biking between destinations on either side. Further, a policy within the plan states that the city shall work to eliminate Highway 101 as a barrier to pedestrian travel. The plan also identifies a possible future location for a new crossing between the intersection of South Canada and Patos Streets and near Dwight Murphy Field, as shown on this slide. This grant-funded planning effort can analyze the feasibility of a crossing in this general location. As discussed earlier, in 2018, the City Council adopted the Vision Zero strategy that aims to eliminate all roadway fatalities and severe injuries in city roadways. The map on your right is a collision heat map from the years 2008 to 2017. A color on the map represents a collision in the roadway. The darker the color, which would be in this case red, would be the more frequent we have collisions. What we can tell from our collision data is pedestrians and cyclists are disproportionately affected in our roadways with respect to severe injuries and fatalities. Because pedestrians and cyclists are our most vulnerable road users, the government does share a responsibility for the safer streets. This graph shows where bicycle and pedestrian collisions with vehicles have occurred in the past few years in this planning, in the plan area. You'll notice collisions are concentrated on Milpas Street corridor and both sides of the freeway crossing. As part of the planning effort, we'll be looking into detailed collision reports to see if there's any collision patterns and whether there are any engineering solutions to address those patterns. We're going to pause again to take another poll. The question is, what mode of transportation do you use most between the East Side and Waterfront or the destination south of the freeway? Is it walking, biking, driving, or using transit? Go ahead and take a moment to answer. Right now I'm seeing in the data that there is about 52% of those that bike the most, 66% is driving, followed by approximately 21% for walking and about 3% for using transit. So with that previous question in mind, we're going to take another poll. What are your main destinations in these areas? Select all that apply. And for the main destinations in this area, is it parks, the zoo, beaches, school, work, stores, or restaurants? Go ahead and take a moment to answer. I'm seeing definitely the beaches and restaurants. parks and stores as being the most popular. Okay, now we're going to briefly share about recently implemented walking and biking projects in the plan area. This map highlights the projects so that we'll touch upon. Let's start with the Lower Milpas Sidewalk Infill Project. A few years ago, the Lower Milpas Sidewalk Infill Project filled in missing links of sidewalk in the East Beach neighborhood. The red lines represent new sidewalk that was recently installed, providing safe walking paths and lighting where none used to exist. These are also walking routes for families that attend Cleveland Elementary School. Here are before and after photos of new sidewalk in front of Tri-County Produce on Milpas. Now there's a continuous sidewalk connection here and greatly improved safety for all modes of travel. Another improvement that was a significant change for connectivity of the east side to the waterfront was the Casique Street Freeway undercrossing that Caltrans constructed. This popular route provides an alternative to Milpas Street Roundabout and undercrossing for all modes of transportation between the east side and waterfront. Another important and recently constructed improvement along the Casique Street corridor is the pedestrian and bicycle bridges located at the intersection of Soledad and Casique Streets. This slide shows the before and after bridges located at this intersection. The new bridge is wider, accommodates two-way travel for cyclists and pedestrians, and provides a new connection between Casique and Soledad streets that did not previously exist. These bridges provide critical connections to Franklin, Adelante, and Cleveland Elementary schools. Sidewalk was recently installed on the north side of Old Coast Highway between Salinas Street and Harbor View Drive. In addition, a new high visibility crosswalk with rapid flashing beacons was installed on Old Coast Highway between Park Place and Harbor View Drive to get across to the municipal tennis court and adjacent park. Another major enhancements that have occurred in the past 10 years on Old Coast Highway include sidewalk on the south side of the street from the municipal tennis courts all the way to Cabrillo Hot Springs Roundabout. This improvement was part of Caltrans Hot Springs Road Roundabout project, which also installed new sidewalk on the east side of Cabrillo Boulevard and a multi-use path on the west side of Cabrillo, where it extends under one of the Highway 101 bridges and connects to the roundabout. This sidewalk and multi-use path will tie into a future project we'll discuss further in the presentation. Now we'll briefly go over some upcoming projects you'll see in the planning area in the coming years. Moving from east to west, we have the Cabrillo Undercrossing Los Patos Roundabout. The project proposes to continue safety enhancements and other improvements included in the US 101 widening project. The US 101 widening project is managed by Caltrans, and it proposes to reconfigure the US 101 interchange at East Cabrillo Boulevard and enhance access for pedestrians and bicycle users under the proposed US 101 undercrossing. This project that you see here will continue those enhancements through the project area under the new railroad bridge, connecting to the existing beachway and on-street bike lanes west of Los Patos Way and East Cabrillo Boulevard intersection. This slide shows the existing condition and a photo simulation of how the intersection will change when looking towards the mountains from Cabrillo Boulevard. The next item, the Salinas and Old Coast Highway intersection, will also be improved in spring of 2022. The intersection improvements are intended to increase pedestrian safety through improved visibility, stop compliance, shortened pedestrian crossing distance, and improved accessibility by reconstructing access ramps for ADA compliance. The Eastside Community Paseos project that will also be under construction in spring of 2022. The project will provide a bike-friendly street along Aliso Street and also tie into the larger crosstown bike network by connecting through the downtown and to the Westside Community Paseos project. With the proposed bike-friendly street on the Alisos, cyclists will be able to ride along the corridor without stopping, since stop signs will be installed on the perpendicular streets. In order for cyclists to feel comfortable riding along vehicles on this street, there will be traffic diversion at some of the intersections, and there will be landscape peninsulas installed at some of the mid-blocks to decrease vehicular speeds. This slide shows a photo simulation of new landscape peninsulas on either side of the road with a speed hump in the middle. This new treatment allows for two-way traffic at slower vehicle speeds. In addition, this project will also include improved crosswalks, a new sidewalk, and pedestrian refuge islands. The last of our highlighted upcoming projects in the plan area is Dwight Murphy Field renovation. This is also a potential location for a future freeway crossing to connect to. Depending on funding, the complete renovation of Dwight Murphy Field could begin in late fall of 2023 and be completed in spring of 2024. Park improvements include a synthetic turf multi-sport field, natural turf youth baseball diamond, field lights, restrooms, an inclusive playground with magic tree house. Circulation improvements include walkways, parking, accessible paths, and the rerouting of vehicle traffic through the park to minimize speeding. With the upcoming projects in mind, there are still some gaps in walking and biking network. This slide shows where there is currently missing sidewalk in the plan area, as you see noted in red. You'll note one of the upcoming projects will address the missing sidewalk on Cabrillo. Other challenges in the area include busy freeway ramps that will need to be crossed when walking through the Milpas Roundabout, and also at Milpas and Hutash Streets, and the 101 off-ramp. There are also busy freeway ramps to cross on the western connection from Old Coast Highway to Cabrillo Boulevard. This next slide shows some types of existing bicycle facilities in place. The purple lines represent a class 1 path that is separated from vehicular traffic. The blue lines show where there are class 2 paths or on-street bike lanes. The green lines show a bike route that is shared with vehicles. Now I'll show you pictures of what we're talking about when we are discussing these facilities. On the left is an example of a class 1 or separated bike path. This is the path that runs parallel to Cabrillo Boulevard. On the right is an example of a Class 2 buffered bike lane, which was recently installed on the eastbound direction of Cabrillo Boulevard in the vicinity of East Beach Volleyball Courts and Bird Refuge. There is an existing on-street bike lane going westbound as well. This slide shows another example of a Class 2 bike lane on the left on Lower Milpas Street, adjacent to Cabrillo Ball Field. The photo on your right shows the opposite side of the street, where there is a Class 3 route, which is a route, again, that's shared with vehicles. And you'll note when it's a shared facility, you'll see sometimes stenciling of a share, what we call a sharrow, with the bike and the two little arrow points. Now we're going to pause to ask two more questions. When walking between the east side and destination south of the freeway, what are the challenges? What are your challenges? Select all that apply. It's too far to walk. Sidewalk is missing or too narrow. Parked vehicles obstruct visibility. Lack of lighting at night. Lack of access ramps at the corners. Vehicle traffic not stopping for pedestrians. I have no concerns when walking in this area. In general, I'm seeing the themes of the sidewalk is missing or too narrow. Definitely vehicles not stopping for pedestrians is another concern. Lack of lighting at night. Okay, let's move on to the next question. When biking between the east side and destination south of the freeway, what are the challenges? Select all that apply. It's too far to bike, lack of bike lanes, lack of secure places to park or store my bicycle, not enough lighting at night. I do not feel comfortable sharing the road with vehicles. I have no concerns when biking in this area. What I'm seeing for a lot of concern is just that the lack of bike lanes, having a dedicated space, let's see, and not feeling comfortable sharing the road with vehicles, and concerns with lights in the evening, and lack of places to park or store your bicycle. Thank you. Thank you again for participating along with us. This is great. So thank you for your feedback on existing challenges. We're going to continue to gather input and evaluate enhancing existing routes as part of the Lower East Side Community Connectivity Plan. Now we want to discuss the potential for a new freeway overcrossing. The dark blue circle represents where the pedestrian master plan had identified a potential future crossing, approximately at the intersection of South Canada and Patos Streets over to Dwight Murphy Field. While there was interest in the community in 2006, when the pedestrian master plan was adopted, we wanted to gauge if there was still community interest. This overcrossing is something that would be several years to design and construct and would require significant grant funding in the millions of dollars. The location is also in and adjacent to a floodplain and other sensitive resources as it is near Sycamore Creek. So if there is community interest, we would move forward with a consultant contract to investigate further the structural, hydrological, biological, and archaeological issues that would need to be considered if we were to pursue funding for design and construction. These next few slides show examples of existing freeway crossings in the city with this freeway overcrossing that might be similar to. This is the Anapamu Street crossing between downtown and the west side. Please note that it doesn't meet current standards for the ADA. This slide shows the Ortega pedestrian and bicycle freeway crossing between downtown and the west side. This is another angle of the Ortega Bridge. This would be similar to what a new crossing would look like between the Eastside and Dwight Murphy Field. So on to another survey question. As previously discussed, the city's pedestrian master plan identified a need for a freeway overcrossing between the East Side and East Beach neighborhoods, approximately between Dwight Murphy Field and the intersection of Canada and Patos Street. So the question is, should the city study a new freeway overcrossing between the intersection of Canada and Patos Streets to the vicinity of Dwight Murphy Field? Yes, no, maybe, or I need more information. Go ahead and take a minute to answer. Great. What we're seeing the most popular response is yes. And then there's a few maybes and I need more information, which is great at this time because we would need additional information to investigate further. Thank you. For next steps, this Saturday from 10 to noon outside in front of the Franklin Center, we will have an in-person community meeting reviewing what we went over tonight. It is an open house format, so there is no formal presentation and you can stay as long as you want. Please feel free to come to the open house or tell your neighbors about it. And to really share your experiences moving to and from the East Side and waterfront areas. We also have a survey posted online. We have already had a lot of responses and thank you all for being such an engaged community. The survey questions are similar to what we covered tonight, except there are a few open-ended questions. Once we compile information from the survey, tonight's workshop and open house, we plan to hire a consultant to study potential approaches to address community concerns and the potential for a freeway overcrossing. We will return back to the community next year with those potential approaches. All of this will be summarized in a draft plan that will go to the city's Transportation Circulation Committee and City Council for consideration. If a plan is adopted by City Council, We would actively seek funding for any infrastructure improvements that come out of this planning effort. Okay, one last survey question that will help us learn on how we best can reach the community. We're curious how you heard about this webinar. Select all that apply. Did you hear about it through the city's news and brief, Nextdoor post, parent square message from your child's school, from a notice in your child's school folder? You saw a sign on the sidewalk from the food bank, or other? Good to hear that some of you definitely read the city's news and brief. That is great. Nextdoor was one, and from signs on the street. Yes, I'm definitely, and maybe in the question and answer, I would love to hear the other on how you heard about it. Well, this concludes our presentation. Feel free to enter any additional questions or comments in the Q&A feature, or raise your hand if you would like to speak and we can unmute you. Also, here is our contact information. You may also go to the project webpage and take the survey, which again was similar to the questions that we had here tonight. Want to thank you so much for spending your evening with us. And with that, we can pause and we'll have Miss Chelsea Swanson pop on to read any questions that came on during the presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. There are a few questions here. I will start with the first one is, why does the contemplated new pedestrian overpass not go directly from South Voluntario Street over to Ninos Drive? Maybe we can bring the plan and area up again.
Yes. I'm bringing it up. I'm trying to find the best graphic for that. So let's see. I know hold on, I think I want to go to the other graphic. That might be a little bit, yes, that has all the street names on it. Great.
So it was from South Voluntario to Ninos was the comment.
South Voluntario to Ninos. That is something that we could look into. We do have Derek Bailey, our city traffic engineer, as well. My initial guess why it wasn't in the pedestrian master plan that way had it probably do with right-of-way constraints. But Mr. Bailey, do you have anything else to add?
Thanks, Jessica. Could you go to slide, I think it was 43. It showed a picture of the Ortega Street pedestrian overcrossing.
Yes.
Even one slide before that. Yeah. So this photo is taken from Wentworth on the west side, and what you're looking at on the kind of on the left-hand side is where the bridge goes over the train tracks and then over the freeway. And to the right is where it ramps back down to street level. And when bridges like this are built nowadays, they have to meet the Americans with Disabilities Act standards, which includes a fairly gentle slope so that somebody with a wheelchair can, it's not too steep for them to climb up. Consequently, in order to ramp up to, I think we need to be 18 feet over the railroad tracks, the ramp can get very long. I think this ramp out here is about 500 feet. There's different ways to configure a ramp, but that's the big challenge, is where do you fit a big ramp like that, especially on the east side. There's probably a little bit more room on the and flexibility on the south side, But as far as like at the bottom of Aliso Street, the bottom of Ontario Street, the bottom of Canada Street, where would there be room for something like this? That's something we would have to study. There's a little bit of room at the bottom of Canada Street, so I think that was probably the reason that in the pedestrian master plan almost 20 years ago, they may have contemplated that location. Like I said, it's something we'll have to study in a little bit more detail, but that's probably going to be the biggest constraint, is just finding enough space for this really long landing on the north side. It'll probably have to end up being like a switchback configuration that can be smaller than this one. There's a little bit more room on this particular one, but that's the reason.
Thanks, Derek. I'll move on to the next question. And also just, I do see a couple hands raised, so we'll get to you. And if anyone else wants to speak, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll get to you. The next question is, do the new Cabrillo Underpass projects include a plan to connect the 2 Class 1 lanes on either side of the freeway?
Yes, the Class 1 bike path will be extended from Coast Village Road through the freeway, and it'll connect into the beachway. So that'll be a really nice connection. The Class 2 lanes, the on-street lanes, those will also be connected through the interchange. We're working with Caltrans right now just to figure out what that's going to look like on the north side of the freeway. We don't have that quite dialed in yet, but yes, both Class 1 and Class 2 bike facilities will be extended through the interchange.
Can you see my mouse when Derek was, okay, great. All right, just was trying to point it out as he was narrating.
Thanks, Derek. The next is a comment, but we might be able to just speak to it real quickly. Is that my family and I prefer an undercrossing along Sycamore Creek to an overcrossing. Undercrossings feel safer, are less noisy, and don't require walking up long ramps. So maybe Derek or Jessica wanted to speak to undercrossings in general, in this case, Sycamore Creek.
Yeah, good question. Again, we would be faced with the challenge of ADA having to ramp down from the street level to get far enough below the freeway and the railroad tracks. So again, finding the real estate for that would be a challenge. There's a high groundwater table in this area, so construction would be a challenge. But it's not to say it can't be done. You know, if that's something the community is interested in, and that would be a superior facility. You know, if there's support for us to move forward and study this in more detail, an undercrossing can be something that we look at as well.
Thanks, Derek. Another question is, did the city consider Aliso Street overpass?
Yeah, again, we would have to study the bottom of all 3 of those streets, Aliso's, Ontario, and Canada. And again, just real estate to find that really long landing on the north side of the freeway will be a challenge at all 3 locations. But it will be considered.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, I am going to, since we have a couple hands raised, go to those. So Eric Schwartz, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you and you can ask your question. Let's see. So that doesn't seem to be working. Jessica, do you want to try on your end if you're able to unmute?
Yeah, I think Mr. Swartz, if you have the control, we did ask to unmute on our end. Let's see, let me try. Oh, I think it, yes,
Okay.
there we go. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, I was just wondering, the millions that it would cost for the overpass, which everyone wants an overpass for pedestrians and cyclists. But what if those millions could be used to improve the pedestrian and cycling infrastructure of the entire area instead of piecemeal here and there? In other words, maybe make Milpas safe for getting across on a bike with for instance, the new facilities in front of Tri-County Market. Those lanes aren't even wide enough for the Marburg traffic that comes with the truck mirrors hanging into the bicycle lane. There's no way for them to get through safely. And that's a brand new facility. So that just wasn't even engineered properly. So what if we actually looked at this whole east side, lower east side section of the city and said, well, we're going to take the 5 million or 10 million that overcrossing would have cost, and let's put that into fixing everything so people can go more than one place safely on a bicycle. Look at all the elementary schools, look at all the markets, look at everything, and get something real. The bulb outs and things like that are a good idea, but cars don't know how to negotiate it properly. So, there's education, there's new technology, new approaches that should be incorporated, and engineers should be forced to ride these new designs daily at all hours.
So yeah, thank you, Eric, for your comment. I think that's what we want to hear, feedback from the community about if there's ways to enhance existing routes. What we'd love to hear is, again, experiences. So please feel free to reach out to us via email, phone call, etc., because that's really helps us in the design of infrastructure. We would probably anticipate phase because, again, a pedestrian overcrossing takes a long time for design and construction. In the meantime, it might be phased where, again, that's something in the community process of ranking and priorities of infrastructure improvements, and maybe looking at, yes, again, enhancing the existing network. Is there anything else, Mr. Bailey, you would want to add?
No, I think that covered it, Jessica. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm going to go back to a written question. Next one is, a bridge built between the municipal tennis courts and the bird refuge would be great for bicycling and connecting to existing bike paths. Is this a consideration? This would be great as well as a Canada Street crossing.
Did I hear that correctly? Chelsea, they said Old Coast Highway and the vicinity of the bird refuge.
Yeah, the tennis courts to the bird refuge was the
tennis courts.
Yep.
To the bird refuge somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, thank you for that feedback.
Okay, the next question, what can be done to ensure that any new as well as existing infrastructure is maintained to be safe for our community to use? The hedges adjacent to the existing Casique underpass are used for narcotics and other crime in the last year, originating from the new Casique pedestrian bridges. So there was mention of fatalities on the new Casique and Soledad Bridge, I believe they're referring to. And so questions about ensuring that, these facilities that we put in will be maintained for safety.
Okay, and that was specific to the Casique and Soledad bridges.
That was the example that was
okay. Okay.
And was noted, yes.
Okay.
But asking for the future, and great question about how do we, if we're going to build a new connection, how how do we consider safety for other issues that aren't related to transportation.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your comment.
The next question is, will the ramp have shortcuts for members of the public to use stairs rather than use the ADA ramp for crossing over?
That's a good question. That is something in the pedestrian master plan when it references crossing that that it would have a stair component, and that's something that we would want to analyze in the feasibility analysis for sure.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that when we were pointing out the Ortega Street overcrossing. We have received requests from the west side to add stairs for that, just so it's not such a long walk up those. So it would be in addition to, we have to provide the ramp for ADA access, but the stairs could potentially provide a nice shortcut. And best practices with stairs now is to provide a little, what's it called? A wheeling ramp, Jessica, up the side, so you can just put your bike tire in it and push up the stairs quickly.
And on a related comment, someone noted there was a slide that showed just stairs up to the ramp, which was from the pedestrian master plan, which again, only showed stairs, but is not what would be constructed.
Oh, yes.
You
And
have
that's something that, yeah, from the pedestrian master plan, I think back in 2006 that ADA may have not, well, the rules have definitely changed since 2006 and not fully considered. So that again, that they do show a stairway, but we would anticipate, again, in addition to that stairway, there would have to be a ramp.
I'm going to go ahead and go to hand raised. Sebastian Aldana, I'm going to allow you to talk, and then I believe you just need to unmute yourself.
Okay, am I being heard?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I tend to recall somewhere in 2018, the city received a grant to do a study and an analysis of this. And just curious to know what the findings were, what you know, as far as the study and analysis, what you came up with
This,
with the grant money.
so this is the beginning of the effort with the grant funds. So we're just starting this effort out. And the funds, though we were awarded the grant, then there's fiscal years when the grant could then be started to do such feasibility analysis. So we are just at the beginning stages for this planning effort.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, and then next I'm going to let Sullivan Israel speak. So go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. I just wanted to say just thank you, first of all, for having this, for having community outreach. I think that's super important. And also for this specific project, I think it's really great. The two comments I just wanted to make sure are noted down is as far as the Cabrillo underpass is concerned, I bike through there all the time to get to work. And yeah, right now it's very frightening place to bike. And so I'm glad to see that that's going to change. And I would just say in that new roundabout, I hope that the class 1 bike lane that's going to be built on the north side is going to have a good connection to the existing class 1 on the bottom. Because even though they're so close together, if there's still a gap in between them, I think that's sort of ineffective. If you still have to take a pedestrian crosswalk, but you're on a bike. And then also, I agree with the people who have been talking about the underpass at Sycamore Creek. Across the whole region, for me, my favorite places to, I say favorite, but I could say like the ones that are nicest where I cross the freeway are definitely in Coast Village Road, there's that undercrossing. And also all the way over in Patterson Avenue in Goleta, there's a bike undercrossing. And those two are fantastic because they eliminate the need to cross freeway on-ramps and streets, obviously, so there's no crosswalks. And also they're much quieter. And I think sometimes people underestimate when you walk over an overpass, how loud it can be. And I know that the one on Coast Village Road, they are planning to add a ramp in. And I know that the ramp can be pretty compact in that instance, instead of needing to be 80 feet long, because they can kind of just stack it up. And it goes back and forth, sort of like they would have in front of a business or something like that. So I would definitely say, yeah, I agree with the people who are saying undercrossing. So thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Sullivan, for your feedback. And I think, yeah, the undercrossings you're referring to, I think is the Maria Ignacio Trail. Yeah, it's really nice. And then I think in Montecito is probably the Butterfly undercrossing that Caltrans is working on some improvements for that. So yeah, we can look into those further. And yes, about tie-ins for the up on our screen is the future Cabrillo Los Patos roundabout. And it's hard to tell in this drawing, but yes, there will be connections on both sides to bike infrastructure. And then the Highway 101 project for the HOV lanes is currently in our review by the city. So we collaborate with Caltrans and SBCAG on those efforts to, again, look at our pedestrian and bike connections. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. I'm going to go to another written question. The overpass is a great idea. The Casique bike bridges are great too. However, it is difficult to cross Carpinteria Street on Soledad by bike, especially during rush hour. Will this new overpass look at the access roads in terms of bike safety?
Chelsea, what was the street again? It was Carpinteria and
Soledad.
oops.
Difficult to cross Carpinteria at Soledad.
Okay. For walking or biking?
Biking.
Biking, okay. Thank you.
And the question, yeah, was just whether or not we'd look at the new, if we'll look at access roads in terms of bike safety as part of this process.
Yes, and that's exactly the items that, thank you for bringing that up. That's what we're interested in hearing, and experiences. And are those experiences every single time for that intersection? Is it more troublesome to cross in the mornings, the evenings? All of that is very helpful information that we could look at, again, for enhancing our existing networks. So thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to a hand raised for Chris Barros. I'm going to allow you to talk, and you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. I'm just, number one, wanted to say I completely support this project and the proposed route at Canada and Patos over to the south side. I am a resident on Casique Street by Canada, so I'm not exactly mid-distance on the north side of the freeway, not exactly mid-distance, but close to mid-distance in that graphic that you're displaying right now. I'm 71 years old. My family moved here in 1965. I still bike. I take my bike to the beach. I take my bike to work, and I do it on the Casique to Milpas, and it's not pleasant. So I really think this option, I will still end up taking that way to work, but for a pleasure and to ride to the beach, this would be a greatly desired boon to our community, in my opinion, and I'm thankful for what you're doing.
Thank you for sharing that, Chris. Again, yeah, it's really helpful for us. And, you know, when we like to think and when we're designing or active transportation routes, the goal is for them to be stress-free. So you can get to point A to point B safely. So when you are feeling that stress along certain sections of your route, that's what we'd like to hear. So yeah, thank you for sharing that feedback.
Okay, there's a question. Is it more expensive to build a pedestrian overcrossing or an underpass?
That is a great question. There, as some of the callers so far providing some comment, there's more infrastructure to an overcrossing for some of the ramps, but again, if we do an undercrossing, there's still ramps involved there. So I think that's something when we have a consultant and we're looking at infrastructure, that is something that we'd be asking for ballpark construction figures on.
Thanks, Jessica. I see a hand raised. Jess, I'm going to allow you to talk and you can go ahead and unmute yourself, ask your question.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and you guys' effort and work on this process. I am in the same vicinity as Miss Barrows, and biking to the beach here, we have to take Casique. And from where we are, there's no bike lanes to Milpas, and it is kind of scary. And then a little bit between there and Milpas and the beach, but it's not too bad. I know that an undercrossing and an overcrossing both have their pros and their cons and costability. And I think it's a great idea that we have another option to go over to the beach. But my only concern is we have such a homeless problem issue over here on the east side. We do have a sit and lie ordinance. My biggest fear is that I hope that either which way you decide to go, either a pedestrian undercrossing or a over or undercrossing, however you want to do it, will be well lit, especially if people can be using it at night. So that's just my only concern, but I know you guys are in the beginning of stages and getting in all your data. So let's see what happens.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jess.
Okay, so I see everyone who's spoken already still has their hand raised. So if you don't have a new question, I believe you can take your hand down. But if you have another question, feel free to leave it up. It looks like Eric might have another question, so I'm going to go ahead.
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Sullivan, if you have another question, go ahead and unmute. Otherwise, let us know if you don't have a question. And that was to Sullivan.
While we're waiting, if there's any other questions, I just wanted to put the contact information back on the screen. So if there's anything else that you think about or want to share with us, please feel free to reach out via email. From the website is a survey if you want to add any additional information, or feel free to call us. And like I said, we also will be in person at the Franklin Center on this Saturday. So if there's anything else to add, we will be there to listen.
And Jessica, it looks like the rest, we have some great comments. I don't see any additional questions at this time, just comments that we'll note down.
Great. Well, thank you also for providing comments, and We really appreciate everyone's time tonight and really appreciate it. It's happy to have the rain today, and it looks like there's, a break in the weather, so maybe we can do a little evening walk tonight. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being with us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.